Let's get straight to the question at hand. What are the pros and cons of maining one character versus having a secondary as well? Having two people that you play a lot pretty much. There's quite a bit to talk about, so we'll be going over the pros first and then the cons of having a secondary. I hope this video can help you decide if you want to play either one character exclusively or if you want to play two different characters. There are actually quite a bit of pros of having two mains, even though it isn't talked about way too much. One of these is that it is very harder to counterpick. Imagine if your opponent's main that they play in your said game is very good versus your character, but that your character is good versus other characters except for that character that your opponent chose. Well, if you're at equal skill level, he should usually win, just because his character does have a very good matchup. This does not mean that he will win 100% of time, but he should win more often. Now, this is where dual maining comes in. If you have a second character that you play, then you may have a good matchup versus the opponent that your first character may have had a bad matchup versus. This can make it much easier in tournaments where you have no idea what characters you'll be fighting and what characters your opponent will pick, such as a blind or an online tournament. Another simple pro is the fact that it may keep you playing the game for longer. Many high-level players get bored as they reach the skill cap of the game and only have one character to play. They don't have as much room for improvement and really can't do as much as if they had two mains. A third really big bonus of having two mains or dual maining or having a secondary is the fact that you can play a game like an MMO or something like that and you will help the party a lot more. Having two different characters can help your teammates if they want to change up their strategy or if they are simply fighting a different boss or they need a different strategy to be in place. If you would have only focused on one person, you may not have had as big of a choice or have as much choices as if you picked multiple people to main. The choice of having different strategies also does apply to fighting games, however. If you're fighting an opponent, they may get used to you just going in over and over again with a rushdown character. But if you have a secondary that is a lot more defensive, it could confuse them for a little bit and get you that little extra damage that could be very useful. Now, they may have faced your secondary a lot, and the strategy might not apply as much as before, but overall having a secondary adds up some mix-up potential and can help the lifespan of a game. Now, let's go over something that nobody wants to hear, the cons. Now, there are quite a bit of cons that I will be going over. They are, you will improve at a slower rate, you may get bored faster because you are not getting good fast enough, and you will most likely lose mirror matches if they have a single main but you also have a secondary. Let's get to improving at a slower rate. Now, I don't want to make you think that having a secondary is terrible or anything, but it does come with some hefty comebacks as I've stated above. These things could change your minds about keeping your secondary. Now let's actually get to improving at a slower rate. Let's say you want to get good as a really good character. It'll take about 100 hours to become okay or pro if you practice. I'm going over how to practice in another video, so check that out. Now that is quite a bit of time, but if you add a secondary into the mix, it will add about another 100 hours, so it will add up to 200 hours. This is obviously a lot of time and a lot of work. Now, I'll have to pull some numbers out of the sky and say you are switching continuously between the two if you like to do that. If you do that, you will improve a bit slower in my opinion, because your mindset will have to keep switching from one to the other and back and forth, and that alone could add 10 to 50 hours of extra practice. This is out of my head, so do not take that as law, but that could add some extra time to get good as a character. Now, spending 250 hours on a game compared to only 100 is a pretty good contrast. But we must remember that if you have two characters, then in a tournament, you will have a much higher chance of winning if you are an expert level at both of them because of the counterpicking. As for the second con, this may slightly contrast a pro I said, but let me explain why this makes you get bored of a game faster. Even though I said earlier that it could make the game last longer and make you bored of the game slower. This con all depends on you as a player. If you hate being bad at a game for a long time, then you should probably not choose a secondary. The reason being is that they add a lot of the time where you have to be bad at the game. Now, some people may find this as a pro, having more time to learn and just having some fun, but some other people could find this extra time as a con. Many people don't want to be worse than their opponent when they're fighting them, and that's just not really fun for quite a bit of people, and the amount of time that's needed really can be hard. This con is mostly based on how you view games. If you like to take on games slowly, then it's better to choose a secondary. Otherwise, just choose one main because it will take less time to get just as good as you would overall. The third thing that can happen is if you happen to face a mirror match in a tournament, you will be in big trouble. I mean, you could be just as good as the opponent that only mains one character, but if you've both played essentially the same amount of time overall, you will most likely lose. I mean, you have only had half as much time as the opponent to get good at your main. Now, you may be better than them, but I warn you to be ready to lose to a lot of mirror matches unless you play the game all the time and get extremely good at both characters. If you spend the time and do that, then this con is really non-existent, but if you can't spend a ton of time, then this con is very important. You will lose a lot of mirror matches. Now that I've said the pros and the cons, you've probably been wondering what my opinion is on this subject. Well, to be honest, a lot of the time I try to dual characters, but eventually I go to a single main. Sometimes I just don't have the time to get extremely good at two characters, and I just decide to go for one. If you're tight on time, I would really recommend a single character, but if you have a lot of extra time, then I would recommend a secondary because they have a lot of benefits, just the main negative is the time aspect. They have a lot of pros, and that will help you be better and win more games. Thank you all for the support on my video and my channels lately. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like and say how you like to play the game and explain your reasoning, whether you have a single main or if you have a secondary. Your comment may help some other people in their own decisions. Thank you all for watching and see you all next time.